Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson, and rather exhausted after that emotional game. What a crazy game. And I urge you to pretend as though it wasn't your favorite team playing and just treat it like any other Thursday game. How crazy you think that was. I mean, the weather, obviously short weeks always make things weird. Division. I really feel like the Browns kind of treated this like their Super Bowl. Garrett took it personally and is a total superstar, whether you guys ever want to admit that or not. And the Steelers just don't play well in that building. I mean, it is starting to really become a trend that when they go up the turnpike, go a little bit north, they struggle lately, and for whatever reason. But let's do our usual move here. I'm going to go through the halftime stats quickly, see what we were feeling at that point. And really, that's where the game was lost, was all the mistakes early on that you probably could have, you were moving the football, you probably could have built a halftime lead, and instead it's 10-3 at the half because of mistakes you were making. And it just gave a team that doesn't have a lot of hope. So at that point at the half, Wilson was 11 for 13. At this point, the weather's pretty decent too. It's not a total whiteout. 147 yards. I mean, he's on pace for a 300-yard game. Winston only had 78 yards, but he was 7 for 11. Those guys are completing a lot of passes. Pickens had 3 for 41. Judy had 3 for 39. Steelers had 6 first downs compared to 7 for Cleveland. They were 4 of 8 on third. Browns were 0 of 4. More of that later. But they screwed up a fourth down. You know, I treat that as a turnover. That's one turnover. Browns were 1 and 1 on fourth down. Steelers had outplayed, had run 30 plays compared to 23. They had 163 yards in the first half when the weather was somewhat acceptable. They moved the football pretty well. Browns had 119. They averaged 5.4 yards per play compared to 5.2. There wasn't a lot of explosives or anything at that point. 38 to 41 in terms of rushing yards. Neither team was running the ball very well. 4 penalties for 30 for the Steelers, only 2 for 10 for the Browns, and that certainly favored Cleveland in this game. At this point, there was 1 turnover versus 0 for Cleveland, but with a missed field goal and a missed fourth down, really you're losing the turnover battle 3-0 at the half. And frankly, that's the difference. If you make the field goal, if you get that fourth down, if you don't turn the ball over that one time, you're probably going into halftime with a lead. You had 17 minutes and 35 seconds of first half possession. It's what you want. But pass rush was a problem. Now, pass rush really equaled out and kind of got nullified and less important when there was snow and there's no footing and you can't change directions to chase down these quarterbacks. But 4 first half sacks for the Browns, 0 by the Steelers. And my notes are just so many errors, turnovers. No pass rush. 1 really bad drive allowed, though. I mean, like the defense was pretty good, but they had 1 bad drive. Can't handle Garrett. These are my halftime notes. Both quarterbacks are completing everything, but not really tearing you up. So, as you know, the game final was 24-19. Wilson ends up 21 of 28 for 270, a touchdown, no interceptions. Winston ends up 18 of 27, 219, no touchdown, interception. But I thought Winston played better. He made more big plays when it mattered. Although Wilson, I thought, did some good stuff as well. We'll get to both these guys. The run game, though, just the pure running backs. Warren and Harris ended up with 27 carries for 86 yards. Not nearly good enough. Not really good enough. Chubb was 20 for 59. They did a pretty good job bottling him up. Judy ends up with 6 for 85. He's been really catching fire lately and had a good game. Browns lost 2 fumbles. Steelers only lost 1, but there were 5 total fumbles in this game. Obviously, weather and whatnot had something to do with it. They each had 17 first downs. The Browns, as we talked about, were awful on third downs. Give the Steelers defense credit there. 1 of 10. The Steelers were 7 of 16, but 16 snaps on third down is just too many. You know I'm a big believer in what's the denominator in the third down conversions. 16's a lot, especially when you run 67 plays. Browns ran 55, but that's not ideal. It'd be nice to get some first downs on first and second down. On fourth down, the Browns were 4 for 4. That was absolutely massive in this game, and just as massive, the Steelers were only 1 of 3, which means you gave them the ball. You turned it over to them twice on fourth down. Both offenses averages 5.5 yards per play. Steelers end up running for 120. Cleveland for 85. 1 of 2 in the red zone. Weren't there enough. 2's not enough in a game like this. The Browns reached the red zone 4 times and scored 3 of them. That's huge. Penalties ended up being pretty equal, but favored the Browns early. They ended up with 4 for 48. The Steelers were 6 for 39. When it was all said and done, the Browns turned the ball over 3 times traditionally. And when Winston finally threw that pick, I really did think the game was over. Wrong. Meanwhile, the Steelers only turned the ball over once, but the reality is they turned it over 4 times. But time of possession was just over 36 minutes compared to just under 25 for the Brownies. Just under 24, I'm sorry. So I thought you had them where you wanted with all those first down runs and early body blows, and couldn't quite finish off what I thought was a pretty tired, beat-up Browns defense late. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today and get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. I think I said this to start the show, but it's late, but the game just ended. So as usual, this is just my off-the-cuff first response. I will record another tomorrow afternoon that'll be much more in-depth, snap counts, scheme trends, all sorts of other information. So this is going to sound a little bit of a Steelers apologist, and I don't mean it to, because this is not a great loss. Ouch, don't get me wrong. But I'm honestly not that broken up over this. You're 8-3 with 10 days to prepare for the next opponent. And I kind of thought the Browns had played this like it was their Super Bowl. You know, like last chance to redeem ourselves against a team that's pushed us around over the years. Not really in their building. And it was one of the best games. I bet if you grab somebody that does what I do for a living for the Browns and asked them, what's the best game the Browns played all year? In a vacuum, how they played. I bet they would pick this one. And if you remember previewing the game, I thought there were 3 things is how the Steelers could lose this game. First of all, you could just beat yourself, you know, turn the ball over a ton of injuries, something like that. Get destroyed by self-inflicted wounds. Well, check. I think that happened. My other 2 were more Browns related. Garrett takes the game over. Well, yeah, he did. He absolutely did, especially when the weather allowed it. And he is a phenomenal player. And the other one was Winston gets hot. I mean, he is a very volatile player. And all those things happened. Now, Winston did throw a pick that could have cost them the game. But he made a lot of plays, especially scrambling into the end zone. You know, fourth down conversions, big throws when they need it, extending plays. He certainly isn't known for being an athlete. So we can be hard on the Steelers, and I'm sure I will be tomorrow, and I'm not thrilled with the way they played, don't get me wrong. But please give the Browns credit, too. I mean, I thought they played well. I thought their quarterback and superstar defensive player set the tone for their team and played well. Steelers aside. Browns have won 5 of the last 6 in Cleveland. Is this going to be a thing? It's something we need to pay attention to next year. And frankly, when the schedule came out and I saw they had a short week after a Ravens game in Cleveland, I put an L by it. Now, all week of prep, I thought, boy, there aren't many matchups that favor the Browns. There's Garrett. There could be a hot Winston. But overall, the Steelers have more things going their way. They didn't take advantage of that. I think the weather also clearly brought the two teams together a little bit in terms of talent. And the biggest thing was just too many early mistakes and turnovers. You're not going to beat many teams this league, doing those things, missing field goals, turn the ball over, not converting on fourth downs, handing them short fields for your defense, and there were a lot of those. Again, we all thought the Browns would be a competitive team this year. They weren't. But with Winston, they're now 2-2, beating the Steelers and Ravens. They're kind of been an average football team with Winston, not a garbage team that their whole season reflects. Steelers only punted once in this game. Part of that's because you hand them the ball on fourth down or miss a field goal. But boy, was it an awful punt. It was a 15-yard punt off the side of his foot when you needed it most. I mean, that might as well have been a fourth down non-conversion. Now, I'm sure we'll be talking a ton about this in Monday morning quarterbacking it, but I wanted to go on the record that at the time, not knowing the results at the time, I did not understand why you wouldn't have put Cleveland in 4th and 2 and declining the penalty. You gave them an extra down, and at that point in 4th and 2, with a kicker that has struggled, missed 2 kicks last week in those conditions, I thought a field goal was far from a sure thing. And you would have more time on the clock. You didn't know that the drive was going to end up in a touchdown. But I absolutely, and I typed it in as that whole crazy sequence was going on, that I would have much preferred 4th and 2 in that situation than 3rd and 7. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying that after the fact because I know the result, but that's what I thought at the time. How about Elliott? It seemed like every big play he either caused or fell on or broke up. I thought that was an A+ game from him on first blush. He made big plays galore. Watt did not. Now, I'm going to go back and watch every snap of Watt, but I'm not being critical of him. He stinks. Garrett's better, blah, blah, blah. It's just he didn't impact the game with big plays as much as he usually does. Of course, he got doubled and tripled like crazy. So, of course, he impacted the game with things that don't show up in the box score. Of course. But overall, I thought the Steelers' pass rush left a little to be desired, especially considering the Browns' tackle situation. It made an impact. Winston did a good job of buying time, but I thought the Steelers' pass rush would rule the day, and it didn't. There was a time early in this game when I keep talking about how you had self-inflicted wounds, that the Steelers had 16 minutes and 6 seconds of time of possession compared to 3 minutes and 1 second for the Browns. And you're just landing body blow after body blow to a Browns defense that you probably could have. I'm not big on coulda, woulda, shoulda in games like this, but at that point, you have the ball over and over and over. You're not punting. I think the Browns D would have been in big trouble if you would have been able to just execute a little bit better. Last thing, talking about Steelers quarterbacks a little bit. I thought Wilson's numbers were maybe better than his overall performance, but I also thought he did some clutch things and has a good game manager mentality, experience, etc., etc. I don't understand why you'd bring Fields in the game to throw a deep ball, because one of the things that Wilson did best in this game and always does best is throw deep balls. But I do understand the usage of Fields, and I don't have a problem with it. And frankly, it benefited them, especially late in the game, the last stretch that he got in there. I didn't understand calling his deep ball, though, but that being said. But there always seems to be a small procedural issue popping up when Fields is in the game. You know, a false start, miscommunication. And it's just been happening too much since he's been a Steeler uniform for me to say that's pure accident. Everything's just cleaner with Wilson in there. And frankly, I think that's one of the biggest reasons he's a starter. So I don't, foresee any kind of quarterback controversy at all. It's Wilson. They'll probably sprinkle in some Fields. But tough loss. I mean, it definitely was. I'm sure everyone assumed they would beat the Browns. But I thought the Browns played a pretty good game. And you're sitting at 8-3. You got a bunch of hard games ahead of you. Doesn't look like there's any massive injury concerns coming out of this, but I will definitely look into that more, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. And after I digest this for 24 hours and do more work, maybe my tone will change. But overall, I'm not super broken up about it. This was a dangerous game from the second the schedule was made. And the fact that you beat the Ravens last week gave you a little bit of house money in the division. So I'm not trying to candy coat it. It wasn't pretty. We kind of knew it wasn't going to be pretty. And there were opportunities to win it, even though you dug yourself a hole early. So that's what I got. Take care. Talk tomorrow.